sponsors of weather on GB News.
You really could become the next big Great British Giveaway winner with your chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you like. Listen to what some of our previous winners have to say about winning big with us.
On the day that I got the money in the bank account, everything just seemed a lot sunnier.
But I do have something to spend it on.
Just go for it. It's an absolute must.
Thank you, GB News.
Amazing feeling to win.
For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good morning and welcome to Sunday with Michael Portillo. You might have noticed I'm not Michael Portillo, I'm sitting in today. My name's Tom Harwood. Over the next 2 hours we'll delve into concentrated, enlightened debate as we discuss politics, global affairs and the world of culture. As the Tory leadership race is about to kick off, who are the runners and riders that could clinch the top spot? I'll be joined by Conservative MP Saqib Bhatti and my political panel to discuss. With over 5,000 years of history, Stonehenge is one of our oldest and most celebrated sites in the UK. But are plans to save it as a World Heritage Site set to crumble? Archaeologist Mario Trabucco Delta Torreta will be here to share his analysis. Was the Olympic opening ceremony marred by rain, woke references and a lack of French culture on display? And is freedom of speech under threat across the channel? The French version of Ofcom has this week pulled the plug on one of the most popular nightly TV shows watched by millions in the country. Is this a left-wing government overstepping the mark, behind the scenes and influencing what can be said on French TV? We'll be discussing that with the French member of the European Parliament, Sarah Naffo, who'll be joining us for her take. And sports broadcaster Aidan McGee will be here to share all of the excitement ahead of the Olympics now that they've kicked off in Paris. But my goodness me, before all of that, let's get your headlines with Ray Addison.
Cheers, Tom. Good morning. 1 minute past 11, our top stories this hour. Manchester's mayor is urging people not to rush to judgment following Thursday's incident at the airport. Andy Burnham's comments follow the publication of new video obtained by Manchester Evening News, which appears to show a violent altercation in the lead-up to a suspect being kicked by a police officer. The police constable involved is under criminal investigation for assault. Mr Burnham says it's a complicated situation with two sides to it. Former Met detective Peter Blexley agrees.
There's a number of people that look really daft this morning who were very quick to rush to judgment with absolutely appalling language being pointed in the direction of certain police officers. And this incident now, which I again reiterate, we still have not seen all of, is going to test, of course, our police, the Independent Office of Police Conduct, the Crown Prosecution Service, the Greater Manchester Police, and I would say, where's the Home Secretary? Where's the Prime Minister?
Priti Patel has become the 5th MP to enter the Tory leadership race. The former Home Secretary says she can unite the party and turn it back into a winning machine. She joins James Cleverly, Robert Jenrick, Tom Tugendhat and Mel Stride running to replace Rishi Sunak. Nominations close tomorrow. Former Deputy Chair of the Tory party, Brendan Clark-Smith, told us Ms Patel will be popular with members.
Is a good lineup there. But I think if you look at Priti Patel and particularly a relationship with party members as well, they felt very unloved, some of them fairly demoralised after the election campaign. They need somebody who can pick them up again, someone with a bit of vision, someone who's a real blue-blooded Conservative. And I think Priti Patel, she actually fits that description pretty well, I'd say.
Well, that's his view, but these voters we spoke to in Lichfield have a very different opinion.
I don't think I like the lady too much. No. And her views and things.
I'm sure she's a very pleasant individual and I wouldn't want her as a leader if my life depended on it.
She's just not a very good politician. Yeah. And it's not what we need now.
What for you does the Tory party need?
David Cameron back.
I think she can be quite aggressive in a manner. I don't like some of the things that she's suggested.
With the useless Home Secretary, she's going to be a useless leader for the Conservative Party. I refuse to vote for her.
Labour is set to overhaul planning rules to build 1.5 million homes in 5 years. Writing in The Observer, Angela Rayner said delivering social and affordable houses at scale is her, quote, #1 priority. This week, the Deputy PM and Housing Secretary will announce plans to bring back mandatory housing targets. She'll also outline a focus on grey belt land, building on disused car parks and wasteland. Israel has carried out air attacks against Hezbollah overnight after a rocket killed 12 people, including children, in an Israeli-occupied area of Golan Heights. Israel has released this footage, which it says shows weapons caches and terrorist infrastructure being targeted deep in Lebanon. The country has vowed to inflict a heavy price after a rocket struck a football pitch in the village of Majd al-Shams, the deadliest attack on Israeli territory since the start of the conflict. A man has been arrested on suspicion of attempted murder after a woman sustained a serious head injury in Suffolk. 57-year-old Anita Rose had been walking her dog when she was found unconscious in Brantham shortly after 8 a.m. on Wednesday. She remains in a critical condition. The 45-year-old man from the Ipswich area is currently being questioned. It's not believed that the suspect was known to the victim. At the Olympics, swimming training for the triathlon has been cancelled because of poor water quality in the Seine. Triathletes were due to take to the water at 8 a.m, but organisers decided against it. Despite more than €1 billion being spent cleaning up the river, it's thought that harmful levels of E. coli have risen due to the recent heavy rain. Organisers say they're confident that the races will be able to go ahead on Tuesday and Wednesday as scheduled. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Ray Addison. More in an hour's time.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
A very good morning to you. It's 6 minutes past 11. Now, the 3-month-long process to select a new Conservative Party leader has begun after Rishi Sunak announced he was standing down following his party's mauling at the general election. Nominations for the former Prime Minister's replacement opened on Wednesday, July the 24th at 7 o'clock and will close at 2:30 in the afternoon tomorrow. Well, joining me now to discuss some of the potential frontrunners is Saqib Bhatti, the Conservative Member of Parliament for Meriden and Solihull East. Saqib, really good to see you this morning. First of all, who are you backing?
Well, I'm out and supporting Priti Patel. For me, Priti, I've known her a long time. The party she's worked with for over 30 years, it's in her DNA. Look, we've just had an absolute drubbing at the general election. We need some time to rebuild. We need resolute leadership, and I think Priti is the one to do that. And there's a number of challenges we've got. We've got to look at how we are an election fighting machine. We've got to make sure we engage the membership. We've got to make sure that we've got someone who's robust at the dispatch box and will take His Majesty's opposition and hold the Labour government to account. And I think Priti can do that, and that's why I'm supporting her.
Of course, it's a wide open field as things stand. Each candidate needs 10 nominations in order to make it through to the next round, or indeed onto the ballot at all. I suppose it's not a particularly high bar, but it is a very wide open field. What sets Priti Patel out compared to all of the other candidates?
Well, Tom, you're right. It is a relatively low threshold, actually, and it is the breadth of the candidates. Actually, I'm quite heartened by it. We've got some really talented people in the party. But the reason, as I said, the reason I support Priti and why I think she stands out is because she understands the party. During the general election, while she was campaigning for her own seat, she was also helping colleagues up and down the country from all wings of the party. And I think what she knows and what she really her motto of her election, her campaign is unite to win. And I think that unite bit is so important. And one key example of that I would give is her view on engaging the membership. I think that's really vital, because I had loads of activists. I think I did something like 1 million steps over the general election period. And that's underplaying it a little bit. But I had activists who were, while I was doing hustings and stuff, they were still going out there. I mean, these people gave up their time voluntarily because they believe in the cause of conservatism. And I think that's what Priti understands, and that's what is really unique to her.
A membership-focused pitch. There will be some who say, should the members of the Conservative Party really be making quite so many decisions? The members, of course, have famously picked some perhaps less than successful leaders in the past. We saw what happened in 2001 when Ian Duncan Smith became party leader, or indeed in 2022 with Liz Truss.
Well, Tom, let me say this unequivocally. The membership should absolutely have a say. We are a membership-based organisation. We are nothing without our members. And I know Priti feels it's probably stronger than that, than me on that issue. And we absolutely should. And sure, look, we've had a whole array of prime ministers, but we were an incredibly successful party when we've based ourselves around the membership. And we've had some great prime ministers. And I'm very confident that Priti can take the fight to Keir Starmer, because Labour's socialism is going to do huge amounts of damage to this country. This is about making sure we have a strong, resolute leader in place who can take that challenge to the government.
Now, of course, Priti Patel has not been a minister for the last few years. I think just about every politico in the country spent one slightly peculiar afternoon following a plane journey from Israel back to the United Kingdom. And upon that plane was Priti Patel. When she landed, she was told that she was being dismissed from her cabinet role because of undeclared meetings.
Priti is someone who cares deeply about the party, and you're right, she hasn't been a minister in the last couple of years. But the reason why I think she stands out head and shoulders above, in terms of the people who've come forward, is because she cared deeply about making sure that we would be an election winning and a robust fighting machine at the last election. And that's where her focus has been. You won't have seen briefings from her. You won't have seen her going out saying things. That's where her focus has been. She is a team player. And by the way, the Conservative Party only succeeds, it only survives if we unite. And that's why her focus is uniting to win.
And just finally, of course, there was a report into purported bullying when Priti Patel was Home Secretary. It was dismissed by the then Prime Minister Boris Johnson. But is that not a concern for the campaign?
Look, it's a really good challenge, and I'm pleased that you brought it up, because anyone I know who knows Priti, and this is not just in the Conservative Party, but in the Labour Party as well, Labour politicians have spoken about how she's gone out of her way. She didn't do that because she thought, one day I'll be running for the leader of the party. She did it because she's a deeply caring individual. On a very human level, she's incredibly charismatic, she's engaging, and I think she's a thoroughly decent person. And I think where we should focus is how she rebuilds in the future, how she engages the membership, how she is, bold in her opposition to the Labour Party. I think that's going to be hugely important over the next 5 years, because, frankly, we have to earn the right to be trusted, but also earn the right to be heard. And I think Priti can do that.
Well, Saqib Badi, thank you so much for talking us through your support for Priti Patel. It'll be an interesting 3 months ahead. Thanks for joining us. Now, I'm joined by my panel. Aubrey Allegretti, Chief Political Correspondent for The Times, Emma Revel of the Centre for Policy Studies, and the former Labour Member of Parliament, Stephen Pound. Aubrey, let's start with you. What do you make of this pitch for Priti, a membership-focused pitch?
So, interesting on two levels. First of all, you will hear the word unity non-stop, as you did from Saqib, who was out today. And it is a very similar message to the one that people like Tom Tugendhat and James Cleverly are trying to deliver. I think they're wary about being seen to sort of squabble amongst themselves, particularly given the length of the contest. 4 or 5 months of kind of navel-gazing is not a good look. They do obviously need to have quite honest and frank conversations about why they did so poorly, but there's a risk that they just turn on each other and rip each other to shreds, creating a vacuum that then means Nigel Farage is almost the sort of de facto leader of the right, because there is no sort of figurehead from the Conservative Party. The second point you said is about membership, and she is playing a numbers game. She knows that at the end of this contest, it goes down to a final 2, and it's the members who decide. So I suspect she's trying to be quite canny and savvy about this, but whether or not she gets squeezed out by people like Kemi Badenoch and others who are seen to be more on the right, we'll have to wait and see.
And Emma, I suppose one of the names that is being spoken about less is that of another former Home Secretary, Suella Braverman. It seems that she might not actually get that 10 nomination threshold to even make it into this race.
I think one of the differences that I think a lot of people have remarked upon is the difference between how Priti Patel responded to not being Home Secretary anymore, and how Suella managed it. Suella went out very publicly, made a lot of speeches, was quite provocative in her views, in a way that she was hoping would chime with the Conservative Party members. Priti did almost the opposite. She said almost nothing to anyone. She went very quiet, very calm, stayed very behind the scenes, and, from the sounds of her supporters, did a lot of work with the members. And it's interesting to see how those two tactics are playing out. Actually, it seems like Priti's, keep quiet, keep your powder dry, behave effectively, don't cause problems, and then wait for a leadership contest to happen, seems to have served her better than Suella's tactics.
Interesting. Now, Stephen Pound, you spent 14 years in opposition.
It felt longer.
There were a number of leadership contests over that time. Perhaps not the most successful outcomes of those leadership contests, if we're going to look in electoral terms. Yes. What's your advice for the Tories?
Well, I have to say, firstly, in that interview, there's a marvellous little moment, little vignette in that moment, when he said, I'm really glad you brought that up. Now, that's politicians' talk for damn. I wish you hadn't mentioned that. We used to do, look, or it's like Tony Blair's sort of thing. Well, where I do agree with you...
Which means that I disagree with you on basically everything.
And absolutely everything. Yeah. Look, on the Sunday after the election, I was here in this very room, and I said that what the Tories should do is to choose Ian Duncan-Smith as a caretaker. Because everybody talks about navel-gazing. You've got to, as a Conservative, you have to work out where you are going. And I think the direction of the party, the direction of travel, the philosophy, the whole purpose of Conservatism is more important than the individuals. And I think that's what is needed. Call it navel-gazing.
Why do you think there should be a caretaker? Because, of course, in 2010, Harriet Harman stepped in when Gordon Brown sort of stepped back, disappeared, although stayed on as an MP, just not doing his job for 5 years. Did that help the Labour Party?
Well, you'll also know the name of the other leader of the Labour Party who stepped in on a temporary basis.
Yes.
Margaret Beckett.
Yes, the only two female quote-unquote leaders were the unelected leaders.
But, you know, I'm really glad you raised that. No, look, I think a caretaker is important because, look, in reality, there's not going to be an election for 4 or 5 years. We know that. And, of course, if Priti Patel got it, imagine the reform leaflets, because you're going to say Sir Keir Starmer versus Sir Ed Davey versus Dame Priti Patel. And can you imagine the reform ones? You know, vote for the common person.
I think that's the first time that Priti Patel has been described as establishment. But Aubrey, this is a very long contest. Many comparisons to 2005, when it was a similarly long contest, and this funny phrase, a beauty parade, at the Conservative Party conference, which might not potentially seem that accurate. But...
Steady, lad.
That's right, yeah. So there were people that wanted this contest to go even longer. I mean, into December, which was matching the sort of 2005 timeline, and there were people, I mean, even pushing it for it to go into the new year. And basically CCHQ turned around and said, we don't have the money, we cannot afford for this contest to go on significantly longer.
Each candidate is going to have to stump up £200,000 in order to just fund the contest.
Exactly, and that's because obviously CCHQ says they need to lay on events and hustings, they cost a lot of money. There are also basically no people giving money to the Conservative Party anymore. I'm told as well, basically, the CCHQ slightly messed up in that they were trying to sort of drip feed donors so that they donated in May for the local elections and then give them sort of 3 or 4 months to kind of rebuild their reserves to then donate again in anticipation of an autumn election. That all went out of the window. So donors weren't ready to give again by the time the general election was called. So there's no money left. But in CCHQ, not the Treasury. Maybe the Treasury.
It's one of these remarkable situations whereby the only people seemingly caught out by the snap election were the people who called it.
The people who really should have known that it was coming.
Yeah, the people who decided to declare the election on the wettest day of what has been a very wet summer.
Who would have bet on that, eh?
Very good. Now, Emma, there is going to be a huge array of candidates, and for a longer time than normal. One of the most irritating things I think about the last leadership election, or the last but two if you count the coronation, was just how long there were 2 candidates for, and just how short a time there were many, many more candidates. This time round, it's almost flipped on its head.
Yeah.
Is that an improvement?
I think it is. I think, especially coming off the back of an election defeat, you have to have a more wide-ranging and a more honest and a more sort of back to first principles conversation about, you know, the future of the Conservative Party. It's not just, OK, we're in government, we need a new Prime Minister. Actually, uncertainty about who the Prime Minister's going to be dragging on for a long time isn't helpful, so doing that more quickly is probably a good idea. It's not as critical to the nation now who the next leader of the Conservative Party is. It is critical to the Conservative Party and the future of the centre-right, so they need to have a more, you know, nuts and bolts conversation about what comes next.
Yeah, and Stephen, one of the most peculiar things about this is it will all be declared just 2 days before the United States presidential election.
Yeah.
It might be the only time that the country is paying attention to the Conservative Party over the next 5 years. It seems like a very, very peculiar timeline.
Well, it is particularly odd, but I mean, when you have a look at, you know, the grid that all parties do, the elections are the first thing you put into the grid. You know, the second thing is basically Strictly Come Dancing and Love Island. You know, you've got to get the priorities right. So I think that you've also got the local government elections next year, which will be a key factor there. But I think the fact that this is going to sort of segue into the American elections, which are going to be interesting, there's no question about that, will that influence British conservatism? Because there's actually a debate about conservatism in America at the moment. And this is very much Nigel Farage's pitch. Nigel Farage is probably closer to the Trump machine than any other politician in this country at the moment. And, you know, we're desperately trying, obviously, you know, with Kamala Harris, but we haven't quite, you know, sealed that deal yet. So it could be that this could actually, what Emma was actually talking about the philosophy, the future of conservatives, could actually be in the round as part of a general transatlantic discussion. And let's not forget France as well.
Well, absolutely. Well, we'll be discussing a bit more on international politics in the next hour. But thank you very much to my panel. They're going to be rejoining me, as I say, top of the next hour. But Stonehenge is one of our oldest and most celebrated sites in the UK. Are plans to save it as a World Heritage Site set to crumble? Well, the archaeologist Mario Trabucco Delta Torretta will be here to share his analysis.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
And this week, it's disabled adventurer Nick Wilson and rock engineering director Elliot Dayson-Barber from the Institution of Engineering and Technology.
Yes, earlier this month, Nick Wilson summited Mount Snowdon unaided. The first time this has been attempted with the help of an engineered electric mobility chair called the Rock Climber.
Tell us what you did, when you did it, and why it's so amazing, because it's the first time this has been done, isn't it?
You feel lazy, you should try being me, going up a mountain and I was just pressing the accelerator. these poor buggers had to go and come up behind me. It still hasn't sunk in properly, you know, and to be the first disabled person to do it during Disability Pride Month is... I couldn't have asked for anything else. But it's all possible because of Rock Engineering. You know, they've been working on this for the past 2 years to create this machine. I wouldn't be here because I was struggling a lot with loneliness and isolation. I was very suicidal, and they literally saved my life with this project.
The whole thing came around by accident. You know, meeting Nick, and he kind of highlighted some issues to us in terms of his accessibility, and he you know, he lives in Towcester, near where we're based, and he came down the high street and sort of said, I can't even get into the shops in the high street.
So, Nick, you just mentioned that the kind of place you were in before doing this, you were lonely, suicidal. Yeah. What was it like when you finally managed to scale Snowdon? Because I've done it on foot, and just being for anyone, being in nature and fresh air.
The one word that I think I've used throughout this is freeing. It is when you're so reliant on drop curves. It's freeing that you're not reliant on a hard-standing path or drop curves, wherever. You can, in rock climb, you can literally go anywhere you want. Yeah. And freeing is the big word, and it's amazing.
The People's Channel.
Tune in to Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. GB News royalty with your perfect start to the weekend. Lucky us. Feisty and fearless guests.
Well, I'm a normal person, so ask me.
Honest opinions that raises more questions than a Gary Barlow tax return. And a few surprises along the way.
Might be cold in this studio.
That is Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. 8 to 9, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Good morning, welcome back to Sunday with Michael Portillo. Without Michael Portillo, with me, Tom Harwood. Well, English heritage boss Nick Merriman has said this week it's our last chance to save Stonehenge. Yes, the new chief executive is squaring up for a fight from a controversial tunnel under the Neolithic site to culture wars over English history. Well, proposals to build a new tunnel close to the monument have sparked lengthy legal battles over concerns it will destroy the nearby landscape and undiscovered archaeological artefacts. Yet today we learn that the project may be axed by the Chancellor Rachel Reeves tomorrow as part of a reported wide-ranging scale back on national infrastructure projects. Well, this all comes as a decision to add Stonehenge to UNESCO's World Heritage Danger List was also delayed by 18 months earlier this week at the World Heritage Committee meeting in New Delhi. Goodness me, to digest all of this, I'm joined by the archaeologist Mario Trabucco Delta Torretta. Mario, thanks for joining me. First of all, what is the proposal with this Stonehenge tunnel?
So the proposal is to build a big tunnel of 3.5 miles under the archaeological park, basically. It's quite controversial because basically on one side you have the laudable idea of taking away the big A303 that is cutting into the whole archaeological area and diverting the traffic elsewhere. But the way you do this is usually controversial because obviously boring a tunnel under an archaeological area, first of all, doesn't seem quite as smart as you would imagine in the first place. There's an awful lot of environmental concerns. There's chalk layers that obviously are also affecting the aquifers around there. There's concerns about the vibrations the boring machine would potentially cause damage with these vibrations to the archaeological site.
And yet, this is moving the traffic further away from Stonehenge. Is that a bad objective in and of itself?
The question is it the only way of doing this? Because UNESCO themselves have said, they launched a mission with ICOMOS as well. They made a report after a visit to the site, and they said, first of all, you could reroute the A303 around the site. Yes, obviously it will be a big reroute, but definitely will cost less than boring a tunnel of 3.5 miles under the site. On the other side, if you can't do that, the next best option actually is to bore a longer tunnel so that you take away the western approach to the tunnel from within the archaeological site farther away, 2 miles farther away on the west, and make a longer tunnel that keeps the archaeological area altogether.
Okay, so
there are plenty of alternatives.
Is much, much wider than the immediate site.
In the archaeological site of Stonehenge, there are 700 isolated archaeological features. We only look at the stones as the iconic feature, but there are 700 sites.
What sort of archaeological features are we talking about?
We are talking about other circles, smaller circles, wooden circles, for example, towards Aylesbury, and we are talking about barrows, we are talking about tumuli, Bronze Age tombs that are all over the site. And there are burials everywhere. It's a very composite landscape.
So a lot of these sort of treasures have not been discovered in and around the Stonehenge area. Is there not an argument that digging this tunnel, employing many archaeologists as that project would, could actually discover lots of things?
That's definitely the argument that Mr. Merriman has made. The problem you have is that whenever you are making an archaeological excavation during a national transport infrastructure project like this, your agenda is actually dictated by the agenda of the work. So you have people that are constantly nudging you to make haste and get away from there as soon as possible. This obviously is not ideal condition for a very sensitive archaeological program like this one, that potentially for the same area we are talking about would take decades if you are doing it properly, taking your time, planning every single step, caring for whatever you may find out. So it's a little bit more nuanced than, okay, let's just do the excavation and get done with it.
Now, I know anyone who has ever driven on that road will know how terrible the traffic is.
Absolutely.
Because, for understandable reasons, everyone slows down to look at Stonehenge. I suppose the logic of a tunnel is that people physically won't be able to look at Stonehenge, and that'll solve a lot of those congestion issues.
You could have the same exact result by diverting the road and going around the site. Obviously, on one side, you want people to look at Stonehenge and be reminded that Stonehenge is actually there, and it is for everybody to care for. It's an opportunity for a day out. It's a national monument, a national icon even. And so obviously there is a role to play in the visible landscape for these ruins to kind of tickle our sensibility towards heritage. On the other side, yes, obviously the impact on the traffic of people that maybe couldn't care less about Stonehenge, frankly, it's their own right, and they just want to pass through as quickly as possible, obviously needs to be a little bit smoothed out. And that's where, obviously, I understand the plight of the motorist, and I am in a very similar situation in another part of the country, in in Sussex, where I am in a local councillor. And we have another scheme where obviously diverting the route and taking away and swerving to heritage is a constant problem, constant challenge.
Oh, goodness me. Well, this might all be an entirely moot conversation, because it could well be that the Chancellor tomorrow decides to scrap this scheme and indeed many others. But Mario, thank you so much for talking through the peculiar case of this tunnel. Really quite a lot of controversy around it. Thanks again to archaeologist Mario Trabucco Delta Torretta. Now, is cancel culture taking over across the Channel? Was the Paris Olympics opening ceremony another victim of what's being called woke ideology? Well, this week, after several months of political pressure and parliamentary investigations against a supposed right-wing TV channel, well, that's all culminating in it losing its licence from the French version of Ofcom. Is the government overstepping its place and blocking freedom of speech across the Channel? Is this a sign of things to come this side of the Channel too? Well, French member of the European Parliament for the Reconquête Party and member and regular commentator on Sarah Knafo will be joining me for her thoughts.
Hello, good morning and welcome to your GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. Well, as high pressure builds across the UK, that means plenty of fine and dry weather to end the weekend. Once any mist and fog clears across rural parts in the morning, that will lead to a bright morning and plenty of sunshine across the country for the remainder of the day. And with light winds, it is going to be feeling particularly warm in that sunshine. Turning a little bit cloudier in northwestern areas later, and it might just be thick enough to produce the odd spot of light rain, but otherwise plenty of dry weather and feeling very warm in that sunshine, particularly in the southeast with highs of 26. So later on into the afternoon and through into the evening, there'll be plenty of late evening sunny spells. Perfect weather if you have any plans in the evening, maybe even barbecue weather. So plenty of warm sunshine to end across the south and central areas. A build-up of high cloud in western areas across Northern Ireland and northwestern parts of Scotland. So hazy sunny spells to end the day on Sunday. But otherwise, after a dry and settled day, a fairly settled evening to come. Through into the overnight, we'll see a little bit of a change into the northwest as that cloud continues to thicken. And as we head towards dawn, that will be thick enough to produce some light rain here. But otherwise, it is going to be a largely dry night once again. And when we see those clear spells, we're likely to see the odd patch of mist and fog, once again, mainly in those rural spots. And taking a look at those temperatures as well, that means it's going to be a milder night compared to last night too. So to start the new working week, there'll still be plenty of fine and dry weather around across most of the country. Perhaps a build-up of high cloud, which means hazier sunny spells. A different story in the northwest, though, as we continue to see that cloud thickening, producing outbreaks of rain into the afternoon too. So a damp afternoon here, otherwise largely dry and still feeling very warm in that sunshine, particularly in the southeast where we're going to see highs of 28.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
A very good Sunday morning to you. Now, after a rather damp opening to the Paris Olympics opening ceremony, that's come under a barrage of criticism, from the slow, winding procession to a strange interpretation of a Last Supper tableau. Was the daring and unusual ceremony a damp squib? Well, joining me now to discuss this is the French member of the European Parliament for the Reconquête Party, Sarah Knafo. Sarah, thank you so much for making the time for us this morning. First of all, Friday started with an extraordinary act of coordinated arson before anyone made any move on the opening ceremony at all. Do we know anything about who is to blame yet?
In any case, the government is not saying. Far-left organizations have been mentioned as being responsible. And I have to say, I would not be surprised at all. It was Jean-Luc Mélenchon's friends who have threatened the Israeli delegation not to come to the Olympics, which is unacceptable. This attack shows how vulnerable the organization of the Olympics is, despite the billions of euros spent for the preparation and for security. It shows that despite Macron's best efforts, the underlying reality of French society today is there. We are so divided because of Macron's policies and his predecessors' policies that we need 50,000 policemen to secure our capital. Is this a society at peace? No. It is the result of years of neglect of the core problem of our societies, including mass immigration. We live in a society that is negligent towards the guilty, the terrorists, the ultra-left, but intransigent with honest people. We've seen just how tough French government is on our media, and I think we will talk about it again.
We will. We'll get to that in a little bit. But to the opening ceremony, it's, of course, caused quite a stir, quite an unusual opening ceremony. What did you make of it?
I must say that I'm ashamed for my country. What a terrible spectacle we have given to the world. I don't recognize myself in what was portrayed of my country during this ceremony. Where was the beauty and the pride of our history? I would have had a million ideas to give to the show's designer, but too bad they didn't call me. In reality, the organizers tried to push a progressist, woke agenda, as you said. It was not a show, it was propaganda, and a very boring, bad taste propaganda. The ceremony was about how Macron sees France, not about what France really is, deeply. It was a series of boring cliches about diversity, transgenderism, and multiculturalism. Like, it was a political show. This is not France.
There was quite a lot of French culture in there. We saw the Louvre, we saw the most popular French language singer, and of course, at the end, of the light show on the Eiffel Tower was tremendous. Surely that's something to be proud of.
Yeah, you're right. The beautiful images of Paris, our capital, and our national anthem were beautiful. Because they can do everything they like to our bridges and monuments, but these marvelous bridges and monuments continue to dazzle the world. Now, I think that we need to move on from this appalling ceremony. What is important for me now is the athletes and the competition. I look forward to see the athletes competing, and I'm very happy and now very proud that France already won its first gold medal yesterday with the rugby. Well done to them.
Now, of course, the tableau of the Last Supper that we saw on one of the bridges has caused a huge amount of controversy online. Some people are saying it's blasphemous, and that's leaving aside the fact that it's a representation of an Italian scene by an Italian painter. I'm not quite sure how related to France it's supposed to be. But I suppose, on the other hand, there is a proud and strong French tradition of putting two fingers up to authority and to religion and promoting sort of mockery in a way. Isn't this precisely what France has been about since 1789?
Very interesting question. What it demonstrates is that these people do not respect our history as French people. You can criticize any religion in France, you're right. But the real problem is the fact that these people would not do this for other religions, and particularly Islam. But they are ready to do everything to destroy and humiliate our Christian heritage. They know that with Christians, they risk nothing. Karl Marx is quoted as saying, "It's like slapping your grandmother in the face." This means that they are attacking an order they have already destroyed. When you are a rebel, you risk something. Take Solzhenitsyn. It took courage to denounce the Soviet Union, and he paid a heavy price for it. At this ceremony, we had rebels applauded by the President of the Republic and praised by the press. They are the most subsidized rebels in the world, from every public purse and every organization. In short, their rebellion is an official rebellion.
And yet, do you not look at some of this criticism that's talking about all of this blasphemy and how outrageous it is and think, is this not the country of Voltaire? Is this not a proud French tradition to be, well, quite blasphemous?
You know, I can say that in the past, being subversive meant to be against the norm. Today, being subversive is the norm. So they are official rebels.
OK, well, we're going to move on to this question of the French broadcast regulator now. Of course, it's shut down a television channel that happened to be owned by a Conservative. What on earth is going on here?
Yeah, there is an attempt in France to shut down free speech, particularly towards the right. The regulator's decision is part of that. C8, this is the channel you are talking about, has been cancelled by the state because it dared to showcase different views on the political situation and on the problems that France is facing. This is ironic because most of the media landscape in France is dominated by the left. Take the public broadcaster, Radio France. It is openly anti-right, and yet they are not being investigated or even criticized because they are on the right side of the political discourse. So there is a double standard. According to me, it shows that the system is desperate. They can't fight us using regular methods, so they attempt to stop us from reaching the French public. They won't succeed.
Yeah, the channel had already attracted, I think, 7.6 million euros in fines. This is for various breaches of broadcasting standards. They were accused of promoting fake news and not respecting pluralism, not hosting all sides of the debate. What do you say to that?
They were accused by the same regulator.
What do you mean?
It is the same regulator that accused them for what you say, and the same one just cancelled the channel. So there is a circle. It's the same people. Firstly, the chairman of the French broadcast regulator is appointed by the president. So you can imagine how independent it is. Some in the current government in France have called for the cancellation of C8 license. The regulator is supposed to be independent, but these people are part of the same group. They went to the same school. I know them. I went to the same school as them. They don't even need to coordinate. They share the same ideology, and they see channels like C8 as a threat. Like you, I think.
This is fascinating because C8, as I'm told, hosted one of the most popular evening talk shows in France, which we can see on our screen right now. And now it's being taken off air. It does seem quite extraordinary. Should we, on this side of the channel, be worried about that?
Yeah, I think that this problem goes well beyond France's borders. All across Europe, the system feels threatened and is reacting in a more and more restrictive, illiberal way. It is sick to see the state and regulators being involved in judging what is politically right and wrong. Who are they? Who elected them? We have a new Holy Inquisition that is killing freedom of speech. And yes, I've heard that GB News is also targeted. For me, it would be unacceptable if you are being stopped to broadcast for political reasons. The United Kingdom is the birthplace of democracy and parliament. It would be ironic if it's also the place where it dies.
Well, let's hope that doesn't happen. Sarah, thank you so much for joining us and talking through those issues. Really appreciate your time. Sarah Knafo there, Member of the European Parliament in France. Now, still ahead, will Britain bring back gold at the Paris Olympics? Sports broadcaster Aidan McGee will be here to give us his lowdown on our best chances at winning that gold.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes, she could have said storm.
You made my argument for me. My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
No one wants their child to be a fussy eater. But what is the secret to expanding your child's culinary horizons?
Is there a way to get kids away from the kids' menu, the fish fingers, the chips? Joining us now is the UK's top-selling author of children's cookery books, Annabelle Carmel. Good morning, Annabelle.
Thank you. So lovely to be here.
So, first of all, what's the issue with kids just having the traditional easy meals like fish fingers, you know, chips, beans?
It really depends if they've got preservatives in them, if they're full of salt. So I like to make them myself, and it's really easy. So I make my own chicken glazed nuggets, and super easy to make using proper pieces of chicken. You can cook them in the air fryer now, which is absolutely brilliant, so you need to fry them. And I think that it's really important that children grow up loving good food, because they make their minds up by the age of 5 what they like and what they don't like, and it's quite difficult to change their minds after that. But it's good to know that fussy eating is genetic. It's not to do with your cooking.
Oh,
that's right. Not to say that you can't do something about it. So I've written many, many books, and I have an app with 1,000 recipes on it, and a lot of how to make your own junk food, how to make your own isoles out of fresh fruit.
Yes.
How to make your own pizzas. I make the most amazing homemade pizza. I actually brought you some cookies here.
So these are your books here. So my first cookbook, that's for how old children?
That's from the age of 1.
OK, and you've got a weaning one at the end, the baby one?
Yes, that's my very first book. I lost my first child. It was really sad. She died at the age of 3 months. And my second child was the world's worst eater. And I wrote that book as my legacy to Natasha, never thinking that it would start a whole career.
Oh, bless you.
It sold millions of copies, and it's so popular.
Is it quite pivotal and important that you introduce kids to the weaning stage, or, you know, how important?
It's very important, because the processed weaning food in pouches or jars, it's heated, so a lot of the vitamins aren't there anymore, so making your own is so easy and much cheaper.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment. This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory. Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark Meets and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Sunday with Michael Portillo, with me, Tom Harwood, today. It's 49 minutes past 11. Now, few things bond a nation like the thrill of sporting triumph. Competing in the Olympics is the ultimate dream for many athletes. The event is, of course, a colossal undertaking, and Paris has welcomed over 10,000 athletes who will compete for 329 medals this year. Although, that being said, there have already been some complaints from competitors over uncomfortable cardboard beds and inadequate French food. Yes, inadequate French food. So much so that the Brits have had to fly in their own private chef. Well, sports broadcaster Aidan McGee joins me now with the lowdown on Paris. And Aidan, first of all, how are the Brits doing?
Not too bad. It was a solid, well, more than solid, actually. They got a bronze and a silver yesterday. That's their best performance straight out of the blocks in 20 years, so that bodes well. So we saw Anna Henderson winning silver in the women's time trial cycling, and then just before that, it was Yasmin Harper and Scarlett Mew Jensen taking bronze in the women's synchronised 3-metre springboard. So that was a really, really positive start. We think today that Adam Peaty, who is already a legendary swimmer, he did the 100-metre freestyle qualifying yesterday, and he was fastest in qualifying. So based on that time, you would think he will go on and secure the gold tonight. It's not always that simple. Sometimes it throws up a surprise. I remember covering Rebecca Adlington back in 2008, and I was the only British journalist to have interviewed her. But I'd forgotten who she was, because I was told she was only going to Beijing for the experience. It was all going to be about London 2012. I came in from 5-a-side on a Sunday, and there she was with a gold medal around her neck at the age of 17, I think it was. So you do that. That's what the Olympics is about. You do get outliers. It's a little bit like the Grand National or something. It is elite sport, but you do get people going in from unexpected left field, for example, and doing the unexpected. So I think it's not beyond the realms of possibility for Britain to get 24, 25 golds. Wow. I do. And we shouldn't always focus on the golds as well. Sometimes a silver, depending on who you're up against, is a bigger achievement than a gold. Sometimes a bronze is bigger. There was Dame Kelly Holmes was talking on the radio last night saying how she takes more satisfaction from her silver in Sydney or bronze in Sydney than she does from her gold in Athens, because she was unexpected. She wasn't expected to perform well, and she was in a great field.
And all these medals are very special this year because they contain a piece of the Eiffel Tower.
They do. Yeah, I mean, if you look back, I've seen medals in my time. You know, some of them are quite ordinary. I suppose they're kind of their time, so they're going to look out of date, like any other jewellery, I suppose. Not that you'd necessarily go out on a night out with it around your neck, you know, unless apart from maybe the 24 hours after you won it. But yeah, it does have a piece of the Eiffel Tower. I hope there's something left of the Eiffel Tower, because there's a lot of medals to be given out, Tom, I have to say. But yeah, I thought it looked particularly attractive. It looked weighty as well. It looked like if you hold it, like a proper medallion should. It looks like a proper, you know, as if it's going to weigh down in your hand.
Now, there's already been a bit of controversy in this year's Olympics. Tell us about what's happened with with Canada's women's football team.
Well, there's a lady called Bev Priestman. She is a very successful women's football coach in Canada. They are the Olympic champions. So Tokyo 2020 was played out a year later in 2021 due to COVID, as we know. And they won. And they won it, and they did it. And it was a little bit of a surprise, but they've gone on to really cement themselves as top of the tree in the women's games, particularly at Olympic level. So they played New Zealand in their opening group game last Thursday, and it then emerged subsequently that the previous Monday, 3 days earlier, and you can do this because they're all in a little bubble, so it's not hard to find out where teams are training, and they sent a drone up above New Zealand's training base to look at things like formation, personnel. The rule of thumb in football, Tom, is that, and when I was at the News of the World, I had a contact at Man United who would be able to tell me what the team was the day before the game, because you knew that 24 hours before the last session you did, you trained in formation with the correct personnel, and so that was usually the giveaway.
Drone over to see that formation, and to cheat, I suppose.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not in the spirit of the rules. FIFA released a statement because they're in charge of all the football at the Olympics, and this is what they said: the officials were each found. I should say, sorry, they were banned for a year. Bev Priestman was banned for a year. From all football. She'll probably appeal it through the CAS, through the Court of Arbitration for Sport, and they've been deducted 6 points. So the 3 points they won against New Zealand means they're currently on -3. They play France today. The statement, just for the record, the officials were each found responsible for offensive behaviour and a violation of the principles of fair play in respect of drone usage. Now, it's not uncommon. I do think it is a bit cultural in football. They reckon it's going back to the men's side, going back 3 or 4 years ago. So. Particularly where the women are concerned, it cast doubt over their achievements in 2021, because what's that gold's worth if you know that they're just going around spying on people? And you can pick up a lot. You can see how you defend set pieces. You know who's going to take your free kicks. You can tell an awful lot. That's why they do it.
It is a very 21st century sort of form of football.
It is.
Aidan McGee, thank you so much for talking through those Olympic sort of peculiarities, perhaps. Espionage. Well, you're watching Michael Portillo on GB News. Without Michael Portillo, it's me, Tom Harwood, in for Michael today while he takes a well-earned holiday. We'll be back in just a moment with so much more. Do not go away. We'll be discussing Trump and Harris after this.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News forecast. Lots of sunshine across the UK today, dry and settled, and temperatures rising, particularly over the next few days. And that's thanks to an area of high pressure right across the UK at the moment, light winds, plenty of sunshine as well. And that's the case for the rest of the afternoon. England and Wales, plenty of sunshine, a little bit of cloud bubbles up, but not spoiling anything. A little bit more cloud perhaps for Northern Ireland and the far northwest of Scotland, but most places staying dry. And in the sunshine, temperatures lifting widely into the low 20s, towards the mid-20s in the southeast, 26, 27 Celsius possible, a little cooler around the coast, but high UV levels as well. And if you're planning to be outside for the evening time and afternoon, evening barbecue, we're looking at temperatures in the mid-20s, particularly inland areas. Plenty of dry weather, sunny spells across the board as well. A great end to Sunday, though just a little bit more cloud across the far north of Scotland and perhaps 1 or 2 splashes of rain for the Western Isles. But overall, even here, temperatures getting into the low 20s. Through the evening and overnight, it stays dry for much of England and Wales, clear skies. A weak weather front may produce some light and patchy rain across Northern Ireland into northwest Scotland as well, but even here, most places staying dry. And just like last night, a few mist and fog patches possible in 1 or 2 spots. And temperatures up a little bit, generally holding up in double figures in towns and cities, a little fresher in the countryside. But blue skies for Monday across England and Wales, hazier sunshine for the north of Northern Ireland into Scotland. Later on, thicker cloud could bring some rain across the far northwest here, but generally light and patchy, turning breezy too. And temperatures higher, approaching 29, 30 Celsius towards the southeast, so feeling hot.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Celebrate a spectacular summer with your chance to win an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash in our Great British Giveaway. It's the biggest prize of the year so far, and it's totally tax-free. What would you spend that on? Luxury holidays, a new car, or just put it away for a rainy day? Whatever you do with £30,000 in tax-free cash, make sure you don't miss out on a chance to make it yours. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Sunday nights on GB News. From 6, Neil Oliver. At 7, it's Free Speech Nation with Andrew Doyle. At 9, Mark Dolan. And at 11, get set for the week ahead with headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled.
Lovely. Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Tune in to Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan.
GB News royalty with
your perfect start to the weekend.
Lucky us.
feisty and fearless guests.
Well, I'm a normal person, so ask me.
Honest opinions that raises more questions than a Gary Barlow tax return. And a few surprises along the way. Might be cold in this studio. That is Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. 8 to 9, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the second hour of Sunday with Michael Portillo on GB News without Michael Portillo. Instead, with me, Tom Harwood, today. Michael is taking a well-earned holiday. Now, please spend the next hour with me as we expose ourselves, unprotected by any UV factor 50, to informed opinions on political, artistic and creative subjects. Now, I'm delighted to be joined by my panel throughout this first section. We're going to be discussing American politics, because it's been 2 weeks since the assassination attempt on Trump. This week, President Biden stepped aside. Donald Trump and Kamala Harris are now locked in a tight race, separated by just a couple of percentage points amongst likely voters. Geopolitical advisor Dr. Roger Giewald will be here to share his thoughts on the race to the White House. Also, who doesn't love tucking into a chocolate bar or two? 95% of British consumers agree and love indulging in chocolate, making us the top chocolate consumers across the globe. Research also shows that 4 out of 5 British consumers eat chocolate once a week or more. We'll be celebrating National Chocolate Day with the chocolatier Lisa Green, who will share some delicious treats with us here in the studio. And last but not least, we'll also be belatedly toasting National Cheese and Wine Day. I'll be joined by Jacinta Madison-Wilson, the CEO of Inflorescence. Are Brits now better than the French for these culinary delights? All of that ahead, but first your headlines with Ray Addison.
Thanks, Tom. Good afternoon. Coming up to 2 minutes past 12, our top stories this hour. Manchester's mayor is urging people not to rush to judgment following Thursday's incident at the airport. Andy Burnham's comments follow the publication of new video obtained by Manchester Evening News, which appears to show a violent altercation in the lead-up to a suspect being kicked by a police officer. The constable involved is under criminal investigation for assault. Mr. Burnham says it's a complicated situation with 2 sides to it. Former Met Detective Peter Blexley agrees.
There's a number of people that look really daft this morning who were very quick to rush to judgment with absolutely appalling language being pointed in the direction of certain police officers. And this incident now, which I again reiterate, we still have not seen all of, is going to test, of course, our police, the Independent Office of Police Conduct, the Crown Prosecution Service, the Greater Manchester Police, and I would say, where's the Home Secretary? Where's the Prime Minister?
Priti Patel has become the 5th MP to enter the Tory leadership race. The former Home Secretary says she can unite the party and turn it back into a winning machine. She joins James Cleverly, Robert Jenrick, Tom Tugendhat and Mel Stride, running to replace Rishi Sunak. Nominations close tomorrow. Former Deputy Chair of the Tory party, Brendan Clark-Smith, told us Ms Patel will be popular with members.
Is a good lineup there. But I think if you look at Priti Patel and particularly a relationship with party members as well, they felt very unloved, some of them fairly demoralised after the election campaign. They need somebody who can pick them up again, someone with a bit of vision, someone who's a real blue-blooded Conservative. And I think Priti Patel, she actually fits that description pretty well, I'd say.
Well, she may be popular with members, but these voters we spoke to in Lichfield have a very different view.
I don't think I like the lady too much. No. And her views and things.
I'm sure she's a very pleasant individual and I wouldn't want her as a leader if my life depended on it. She's just not a very good politician. Yeah. And it's not what we need now.
What for you does the Tory party need?
David Cameron back.
I think she can be quite aggressive in a manner. I don't like some of the things that she's suggested.
With a useless Home Secretary, she's going to be a useless leader for the Conservative Party. I refuse to vote for her.
Tough crowd. Israel has carried out air attacks against Hezbollah overnight after a rocket killed 12 people, including children, in an Israeli-occupied area of Golan Heights. Israel has released this footage, which it says shows weapons caches and terrorist infrastructure being targeted deep in Lebanon. The country has vowed to inflict a heavy price after a rocket struck a football pitch in the village of Majd al-Shams, the deadliest attack on Israeli territory since the start of the conflict. A man has been arrested on suspicion of attempted murder after a woman sustained a serious head injury in Suffolk. 57-year-old Anita Rose was walking her dog when she was found unconscious in Bramfham shortly after 8 a.m. on Wednesday. She remains in critical condition. The 45-year-old man from the Ipswich area is currently being questioned. It's not believed that the suspect was known to the victim. Labour is set to overhaul planning rules to build 1.5 million homes in 5 years. Writing in The Observer, Angela Rayner said that delivering social and affordable houses at scale is her number one priority. This week, the Deputy PM and Housing Secretary will announce plans to bring back mandatory housing targets. She'll also outline a focus on grey belt land, building on disused car parks and wasteland. And finally, at the Olympics, swimming training for the triathlon has been cancelled because of poor water quality in the Seine. Triathletes were due to take to the water at 8 a.m, but organisers decided against it. Despite more than €1 billion being spent cleaning up the river, it's thought that harmful levels of E. coli have risen due to the recent heavy rain. Organisers say they're confident the races will be able to go ahead on Tuesday and Wednesday as scheduled. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Ray Addison. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Very good afternoon to you. This is Sunday with Michael Portillo, with me, Tom Harwood. Now, Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, will set out the findings of her Treasury audit on Monday. She's expected to reveal a £20 billion black hole in government spending, paving the way for a potential tax bombshell in the autumn budget. For the past 14 years, fiscal policy has, of course, been subject to public and independent oversight by the Office for Budget Responsibility. So could this signal that tax rises are on the way? And why on earth didn't Rachel Reeves know about this £20 billion black hole beforehand? Well, I'm rejoined now by Aubrey Allegretti, Emma Revel and Stephen Pound. Stephen, this is shameless, is it not? This is sort of just inventing problems in order to justify tax rises that were always planned.
What is utterly shameless is people trying to whip up paranoia and saying there's going to be vast tax rises down the line. Look, when you buy a car, you don't really know about that till you look under the bonnet. Now, we all know that nobody trusts politicians when it comes to budgetary forecasting. Nobody trusts us. It doesn't matter what the party is, which is why George Osborne brought in this Office for Budget Responsibility. But what we do know is in the last couple of years, the Tories have been throwing around all the 40 new hospitals, the Arundel bypass, the Stonehenge bypass. There's a huge amount of money being committed, and we will not know the exact details because it isn't transparent.
But the OBR publishes this.
Yeah, I know. But
are we really supposed to believe that? Are we really supposed
to
believe that Rachel Reeves, who's been in the job of Shadow Chancellor for the last 4 years, has just been twiddling her thumbs, not looking at any of the books?
Of course she hasn't. Look, here's the way it works. When you're a minister in government and or in opposition, and the party's likely to change, you get a briefing from the Treasury. That briefing is very, very confidential, and it is not comprehensive. Certainly, when I was in Northern Ireland, we got a briefing on security issues in Northern Ireland, but it wasn't comprehensive and it was extremely confidential. We don't know the full details of the commitment. What we do know is that there is a major problem here. You're suggesting that we're creating a straw man that we can then knock down and say it's a 20, and then when we say, oh, it's only 10 billion, and we're only going to have CGT instead of an income tax rise, then isn't that wonderful? I mean, I can't imagine that Rachel Reeves would be so duplicitous as to even suggest such a thing.
Goodness me. Emma Revel, what do you make of it?
Well, if Rachel Reeves didn't see this coming, you have to ask why. The Office for Budget Responsibility saw it coming. The Institute for Fiscal Studies have been raising this alarm for a long time.
9 months in arrears.
People have been talking about this for a long time. Pre the election campaign, But all parties decided to conveniently ignore it during the election because you don't get elected off the back of promising massive tax rises. So it's not necessarily that just Rachel Reeves decided to play this down during the election. Everyone did, because they knew regardless of who would win, this black hole would be there and that we didn't know how we were going to pay for it.
Now, Aubrey, I remember during the election campaign talking to Shadow Minister after Shadow Minister about the tax rises that they hadn't committed to not implementing, if we can abide that sort of double negative this time in the afternoon. It's pretty clear we're going to see some significant tax rises that weren't in the manifesto.
Yeah, quite possibly. So obviously Labour's been quite categorical in ruling out rises to national insurance, to corporation tax, to general taxation and VAT as well, with the exception of that being added to private schools. But yeah, there are concerns that they might be pushed into a position where they say they then need to raise things like capital gains tax or look at reworking inheritance tax. And I think this statement will be used to try and lay the ground for making some quite difficult decisions. That's how I'm sure they'll be presented on Monday. We're told that Rachel Reeves is going to stand in front of a podium tomorrow that says fixing the foundations, and so I suspect she will try to be quite structural and fundamental in her analysis of how bad things are.
And yet this is a very, very strange sort of presentation. You've got the build government talking about fixing the foundations, and yet it's being reported that we're going to see the cancellation of the Stonehenge bypass, of the Arundel bypass, of the many of the new hospital building programme projects. £500 million railway fund, restoring the railway fund, is going to see massive cuts as well. I mean, that doesn't sound like it's a build government. That sounds like it's a cut government.
Well, obviously, I think they would probably argue there are trade-offs, and you can't live in a sort of perfect world where you do everything that you want to. I think, you know, we've talked about the tax rises that potentially are on the cards come the autumn, but the opposite to that is how do you try and cut spending? So I think the Arundel bypass had a budget of something like £500 million, or that was maybe for the rail scheme that they were looking at.
Yes, the rail,
well.
Yeah.
So there are things that they're trying to take off the books, and I think delaying the hospital building programme is another of those.
But Emma, is this not confusing day-to-day spend with capital spend? Are these not two different buckets?
They should be two different buckets. I think what we've done over the last, 2 decades or so is draw from capital spend into day-to-day spend in order to try and plug the gap. But that doesn't fix longer-term problems. It means that you're dealing with, whether it's hospitals, train lines, we had the scandal last year of school buildings that were not structurally sound. They had that bubbly concrete that everyone was so concerned about. That hasn't been fixed. That problem's not gone away because we're not, as a country, able to invest what are very significant sums of money in large infrastructure projects, but that will help us grow in future. We're very short-termist when it comes to things like that.
This is the really curious thing, Stephen Pound, because I'm old enough to remember a certain Sir Keir Starmer way back when he was leader of the opposition, talking about something called sticking plaster politics, where politicians don't look at the root cause of things, put off significant infrastructure decisions or whatever it is, and end up having to pay more by putting sticking plasters on everything. Well, isn't he now doing precisely what he criticised?
Doesn't that just show the maturity of the model Labour Party, that we've actually moved on from sound bites into reality? Isn't it interesting, though, that when Liz Truss, in her short-term premiership, she blamed so much on the OBR. She said the Office for Budget Responsibility, we're basically telling porkies, and they were completely wrong. So suddenly, next week, you'll find the OBR is going to be elevated to the Oracle of Delphi. It's going to be absolutely amazing when it was being knocked out. But look, I think there's a thing. One thing you didn't mention when you're talking about fixing the foundations. For people like me, foundations normally mean houses. They actually mean house building, and that is still absolutely, utterly crucial. The 40 new hospitals was absolutely a risible nonsense. It was about as realistic as Jeremy Corbyn's thing about having free internet in an allotment shed everywhere in the country. It was just,
well, a lot of these were sort of additions to hospitals, physical things that were being built in 40 locations, although perhaps not an entirely new hospital.
And you look at Hillingdon Hospital, which is in an appalling state, which is in Boris's old constituency. Nothing's been done there. So that was just nonsense. But unfortunately, that money's on the books. There's commitments being made. It won't be spent because we haven't got it, because our international competitiveness and where we stand in terms of actually the way that the money markets look at this country, which is why we had all this problem with PP, the private partnership. The idea was that we actually didn't count against GDP, so Standard & Poor's and people like that, they didn't downgrade the economy. So we've got a huge problem here. Let's see what Rachel has to say tomorrow. And all I can say is she was an economist in the Bank of England. She knows the brief. You know, she knows the turf pretty well. And I don't think in this day and age, with people like yourself here, you can actually get away with smoke and mirrors. Those days are gone, and it's all your fault.
And yet, Aubrey, this is going to be more of a narrative event than a fiscal event. We're not expecting the budget until October. Is anyone listening?
Well, I mean, I think the Labour Party is trying to do very long-term damage to the Conservatives here off the back of the election defeat. They're trying to do the equivalent of what the Tories did when they brandished that there is no money left note in 2010. And so, you know, the Conservatives lost their mantle for economic competence. We saw that happen, you know, way back when Liz Truss was Prime Minister in 2022. I think they want to sort of bed that damage in and make it very hard for the party to rebuild competence on that matter by saying that the previous government left things in such a poor state.
It's interesting, Emma, you can almost sort of track the arc of the political pendulum by these big economic events, by the winter of discontent, through to Black Wednesday, through to the global financial crisis, through to the sort of COVID aftermath and interest rate rises associated with the mini-budget. It's almost like it takes a massive shock to sort of the economic infrastructure of the country in order to swap one party for another.
Well, it does, but usually the economic shock comes and then the party swaps. What happens is we've had the party swap, and now Rachel Reeves is now going to unveil this economic shock, whether that's tomorrow or whether that's in the budget later in the year. I do want to point out, though, that this is also a tactic that Wes Streeting has tried in the last week or so. He's done a number of interviews saying how the NHS is much worse than I thought, waiting lists are much worse, the infrastructure is much worse. You know, the Conservatives have left the NHS in much a worse state. He's been Shadow Health Secretary for 4 years, and I don't think there's anyone in the country who thinks the NHS is exceeding expectations. So I do wonder how, you know, Labour are going to try this tactic with other areas as well, and how believable it will actually be with the general public.
It is interesting, because Keir Starmer has said this is the worst inheritance since 1945. Which must mean that I suppose he thinks we're going to go to the IMF for a bank bailout, as Harold Wilson had to do in 1976. I mean, my goodness, does anyone believe, Aubrey, that this is the worst inheritance since 1945?
Well, it's an interesting sort of date to compare it to, because obviously that was post-war, and we're in this period now where, you know, lots of senior politicians, Tory and Labour, both say we're in the pre-war era, and defence spending, you know, there are calls for it to go up to 2.5% as quickly as possible, 3%. I see some Tory leadership candidates are speaking about that as well. So it's quite hard to imagine a world in which you can really ramp up defence spending to those sorts of levels whilst having all of this background conversation about how poor the public finances are.
Yeah.
Isn't it interesting, though, that this whole business about there's no money left started in 1964 when Reginald Maudling left a note for Jim Callaghan, the incoming exec. I'm sorry, old cock, there's no money left. But he gave a bottle of champagne. Since then, every single Chief Secretary of the Treasury has left the same note. And it was only when Laws, the Liberal Democrat, became the Chief Secretary of the Treasury that he actually broke that kind of sort of boy's joke about it.
Right, because these were all private notes until 2010.
Very private notes, yeah.
When it was sort of
Reginald Maudling left it to Jim Callaghan. Jim Callaghan never mentioned it to anybody. Jim Callaghan then lent it to, God, I can't remember his name, the Tory finance, the Barber, Anthony Barber, and it went on and on and on. It was only when David Laws, the untrustworthy Liberal, got in there and actually grasped everybody up. Outrageous.
Goodness me. Well, I'm glad that we've got in a little bit of
Liberal bashing.
Lab on Lib, because I'm sure Sir Ed Davey will be delighted that his party gets a mention.
He's coming through the roof now.
Well, thank you very much to Aubrey Allegretti, Emma Revel and Stephen Pound. Now, exactly 2 weeks ago was an assassination attempt on President Trump. How has this affected his campaign to become elected as the 47th president? Well, in reality, 45th, because we tend to count people twice. Anyway, Kamala Harris, will she be able to match his popularity in the polls? Geopolitical advisor Dr. Roger Giewoldt will be here to discuss that. We'll be back in 3.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Khloe Kardashian has come under fire after posting a picture of her 6-year-old daughter wearing a full face of makeup.
Yeah, the reality TV star said the youngster was participating in a dance recital and that wasn't an everyday occurrence.
So this morning we're asking, is it ever okay to let children wear makeup?
Well, joining us now is journalist Julie Cook. So, Julie, it's a child wearing full rouge, bright red lipstick, hair tied back, looking very, very stylised, very much, I think, like a young adult. Is this really the sort of thing we should be doing with small children?
Oh, I think it's absolutely fine. I mean, first of all, in Khloe Kardashian's case, it was a dance recital, so it was very much a kind of performance element to it. She said herself in her post, it wasn't something they do every day. She was taking part in a dance activity. So, you know, I think she's vindicated on that front. But I've let my daughter play with makeup since she was 3. When she was 3, she showed a distinct interest in my makeup palettes, going through my stuff. She's 10 now, and while I don't let her wear a full face like a drag queen, I do let her wear, you know, a bit of mascara on a weekend if she wants to. I don't see any harm in it.
Clearly, if you're a child of a Kardashian who's paid millions of dollars to endorse cosmetics, you know, that's part of the fabric of their family. My concern, though, Julie, is putting those pictures on social media where people can see them. We live in an age now where, you know, wrong-uns are scouring the internet all the time.
A lot of girls do enjoy putting makeup on. It's almost like a self-expression thing. It's like painting on a canvas. They're just trying to be a bit artistic. I don't think it's necessarily as sort of sinister as we're making out. And I think as long as you're not posting pictures everywhere or putting them at risk of harm, I don't see any danger.
The People's Channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion, Mark Meets and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
A very good afternoon to you. It's 21 minutes past midday. This is Sunday with Michael Portillo, with me, Tom Harwood, sitting in today. Now, we're exactly 2 weeks on from the assassination attempt on Donald Trump's life. But how has this affected his campaign to become the 47th president of the United States? After years planning to face President Biden, Donald J. Trump will now be campaigning against Kamala Harris. In fresh polls taken after President Biden stepped aside, Trump and Harris are locked in a tight race, separated by just a couple of percentage points among likely voters. Well, will the gap widen over the coming months, or will this be a deeply unpredictable election? Well, the United States political analyst Dr. Roger Giewolb joins me now in the studio. Roger, it's interesting. Do you think that Team Trump saw this coming, this last-minute candidate switch?
Yeah, I'm sure they knew that Biden wouldn't last the course. He wouldn't stay the course. And I think that, you know, they probably had to calculate and strategize. Would it be Gavin Newsom or any of the other candidates? But I don't think that Kamala was at the top of their list. And I don't think that they or anybody anticipated that she would go from being an abject last runner with a rating lower than Joe on his worst day to being the superstar she's become overnight, solely because she is a black Asian woman. 3 things which have nothing whatsoever to do with being president of the United States. But she's on the tsunami wave, especially among certain segments of the black population and younger people, of being a hero all of a sudden, when her track record is, of course, still abysmal. And Obama and his wife didn't endorse her to the last minute with that completely cringe-making telephone call.
Why do these politicians keep doing these filmed phone calls as if they're on an episode of The Apprentice?
Because
sort of holding it out on speakerphone as if it's all such a big surprise with the camera crew there. I mean, we all know what's going on.
Because they're politicians. I mean, the late Rishi was famous for sleeve-rolled-up photo ops, wasn't he?
Yeah, no, it's interesting how they sort of try and appear so very natural, but it's all incredibly staged. I do wonder, though, because Joe Biden obviously said when he was running that he would pick a woman to be his running mate. He didn't. Did he say a woman of colour? I think he might have said a woman of colour actually to be his running mate, which really narrowed the field and meant that he had to pick Kamala Harris on identity rather than on policy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what this is all about. This is on identity, on gender and race, rather than on policy, because, you know, her record on the border and all the other things at which she's failed is abysmal. I mean, how does a person half his age get a rating lower than he?
And yet, many vice presidents have quipped about this being, you know, the worst job in American politics, status without power, being vice president. I mean, sure, you can preside over the Senate, but you've got no real authority to do anything at all.
It's not a bad job if you're under a doddering old man who could fall over any moment. And this is exactly what's happened here.
It's an attractive job because it's seen as a stepping stone rather than it holds any sort of power in and of itself.
Sure.
Yeah.
But it also holds power after you leave office. I mean, you certainly go to commerce and industry and wherever you want to go with a very powerful platform, having been Vice President of the United States.
Now, it's worth saying that despite Kamala Harris's sort of low ratings as Vice President, we have seen an uptick in her ratings since she declared, and there was this sort of extraordinary rally to Kamala effect. Part of that might be down to her campaign team. They have undoubtedly created a buzz on social media. There have been positive memes spun out of peculiar sound bites. There's this speech she gave about falling out of a coconut tree that went wildly viral, but in a strangely positive way for her.
I wouldn't give them too much credit because I think that her comms team and her strategy team could certainly have advised her that whatever one's view of Gaza, Hamas, Israel, if you're an aspiring head of state, you don't go and spit in the face of the leader of a sovereign nation of any kind, anywhere, at any time. That was her first step, Tom, onto the stage of international affairs, was to shun Netanyahu's speech, which was a stupid thing to do, really undiplomatic, really dumb, and ill-advised. And I'm sure she had people advising her who should have said, don't do that.
It's a very difficult balancing act, of course, because there are a significant number of Democrat voters who hate the guts of Benjamin Netanyahu. And I suppose there are Democrat strategists who are worried about that flank of their party, perhaps more so than the pro-Israel side.
I don't think she would have lost those people by sitting in her seat and listening to the man's speech like everyone else. It was a gratuitous move, and I think it was fairly unintelligent and certainly very unstrategic. She didn't have to go in there and wave a flag saying, I love you, Bibi. She just had to sit there. But to publicly declare, you know, that she wasn't going was it's reminiscent of the sort of gaffes that she's made before.
And yet there's this odd sort of parallel with 1968. Of course, there were anti-war protests then. You had LBJ, the incumbent president, at the last minute stepped down mid-primary. And then people sort of rushed towards what was then a contested convention. That's where the parallel ends, because this time round it's not a contested convention. It's a coronation. And for me, sitting here as a journalist, I sort of think, that's a shame.
Yeah.
I would have liked to have seen a bit of a rough and tumble on the conference floor.
Yeah.
Do you think that they've missed a trick here by not having a contest?
Yeah, I think so. I think everybody was getting ready for a contest between 4 or 5 people, and it would have been a very good contest, and probably a better candidate would have emerged than Kamala. But I think what happened here is that they went into a panic. I mean, my personal theory is that Barack Obama, who is the worst president we've ever had, not Joe Biden.
Why do you say that?
Oh, my God, because just for openers, he thought, I guess his ego drove him, he thought he could go and make friends with and appease Iran and give them some nuclear capability, and then there'd be our friends. And he's endangered the whole world, you know. And
was he worse than William Henry Harrison?
William Henry, that's very good. You know your history. The difference is that William Henry Harrison didn't have the tools that Barack has today. And everything he did was so woke and so over the top and so against the era. The reason Putin is sitting there laughing at America is because of the things Obama did. But if I can just get back to the point very quickly, Obama, this is his third term. He's been running Biden this whole time, and he wants a fourth term. And he thought he would keep Biden, you know, active walking across the stage till he couldn't anymore. What happened is they couldn't push it any further. And then Biden said, well, I'm not going. And then Nancy Pelosi and Obama said, well, we're going to invoke the 25th Amendment, get rid of it. So he had to back down. I think this is damage limitation. They were in such a state of shock, they didn't have time to plan any of the sort of things you're talking about. They needed to do something fast. And their best bet was to make Kamala a superstar because she fits these gender and race patterns.
Well, let's see if it will work. Of course, it's a tight election. And just from a journalistic perspective, much more fun to cover an election where there's 2 points in it rather than 20 points.
Well, who's 2 points? Because if you look at the British bookies, they've still got Trump way far ahead. And I have more faith in the British bookies than I do in various polls. They've been around a long time.
Well, Dr. Roger Gewald, thank you so much for talking through what is a fascinating United States election. Now, we're a nation that loves to indulge in a chocolate treat or two. Coming up, we're going to be celebrating National Milk Chocolate Day with the chocolatier Liza Green. I'd love to hear what you think is the best British loved chocolate at gbnews.com/your say. But first of all, before all of the chocolate, let's get your headlines with Ray Addison.
Cheers, Tom. 12:31. Good afternoon to you. Manchester's mayor is urging people not to rush to judgment following Thursday's incident at the airport there. Andy Burnham's comments follow the publication of new video obtained by Manchester Evening News, which appears to show a violent altercation in the lead-up to a suspect being kicked by a police officer. That constable involved is under criminal investigation now for assault. Mr. Burnham says it's a complicated situation with two sides to it. Priti Patel has become the 5th MP to enter the Tory leadership race. The former Home Secretary says she can unite the party and turn it back into a winning machine. She joins James Cleverly, Robert Jenrick, Tom Tugendhat and Mel Stride running to replace Rishi Sunak, and nominations close tomorrow. Labour is set to overhaul planning rules to build 1.5 million homes in 5 years. Writing in the Observer newspaper, Angela Rayner said that delivering social and affordable houses at scale is her #1 priority. This week, the Deputy PM and Housing Secretary will announce plans to bring back mandatory housing targets. She'll also outline a focus on grey belt land, building on disused car parks and wasteland. At the Olympics, swimming training for the triathlon has been cancelled because of poor water quality in the Seine. Triathletes were due to take to the water at 8 a.m, but organisers decided against it. Despite more than €1 billion being spent cleaning up that river, it's thought that harmful levels of E. coli have risen due to the recent heavy rain. Organisers say they're confident the races will be able to go ahead on Tuesday and Wednesday as scheduled. Right, those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Ray Addison. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News forecast. Lots of sunshine across the UK today, dry and settled, and temperatures rising, particularly over the next few days. And that's thanks to an area of high pressure right across the UK at the moment, light winds plenty of sunshine as well. And that's the case for the rest of the afternoon. England and Wales, plenty of sunshine, a little bit of cloud bubbles up, but not spoiling anything. A little bit more cloud perhaps for Northern Ireland and the far northwest of Scotland, but most places staying dry. And in the sunshine, temperatures lifting widely into the low 20s, towards the mid-20s in the southeast, 26, 27 Celsius possible. A little cooler around the coast, but high UV levels as well. And if you're planning to be outside for the evening time and afternoon, evening barbecue, we're looking at temperatures in the mid-20s, particularly inland areas. Plenty of dry weather, sunny spells across the board as well. A great end to Sunday, though just a little bit more cloud across the far north of Scotland and perhaps 1 or 2 splashes of rain for the Western Isles. But overall, even here, temperatures getting into the low 20s. Through the evening and overnight, it stays dry for much of England and Wales, clear skies. A weak weather front may produce some light and patchy rain across Northern Ireland into northwest Scotland as well, but even here, most places staying dry. And just like last night, a few mist and fog patches possible in 1 or 2 spots. And temperatures up a little bit, generally holding up in double figures in towns and cities, a little fresher in the countryside. But blue skies for Monday across England and Wales. Hazier sunshine for the north of Northern Ireland into Scotland. Later on, thicker cloud could bring some rain across the far northwest here, but generally light and patchy, turning breezy too. And temperatures higher, approaching 29, 30 Celsius towards the southeast, so feeling hot.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
A very good afternoon to you. It's 36 minutes past midday. Now, for lovers of chocolate, you're in luck, as today marks National Milk Chocolate Day. Celebrated annually, this day is dedicated to indulging in and appreciating the creamy, sweet delight that is milk chocolate. Now, polling suggests that 95% of us Brits consume chocolate. And across the world, research has shown that this nation is the most faithful chocolate consumer. But what exactly makes the best milk chocolate? Joining me now to discuss this is the artisan chocolatier, Liza Green. Liza, first of all, chocolatier is the most marvellous title in the world. How did you get into it?
Well, my first career was actually in television. I used to work for the BBC as an exec, and chocolate making was always a passion of mine because I was born in Belgium, which is the birthplace and home of chocolate. And I used to visit local chocolate factories and be very inspired. And I put it on hold a bit because at the time I was seen as being a bit too academic for going into the chocolate business and being a woman. Luckily, that is now a bit different. But it's something that I have been toying with for a long time. And just before COVID, decided to go with it and built a website and started trading, and it developed from there.
Absolutely marvellous stuff. Is it more of an art or is it more of a science?
Well, that's a very good question. I wish at school I had done chemistry, because with regards to how long you can keep your chocolates, it would have been very useful to know more when I was younger about which sugars do what. So if you make a filling for a chocolate with cream and sugar and chocolate, it will taste very nice, but it won't last very long. So if you balance quite natural sugars like glucose and honey, and sometimes a bit of sorbitol, it makes your shelf life last much longer.
These are sort of considerations I'd never have thought about, sort of going into sort of which particular sort of combinations actually make the chocolate last longer.
Yes.
What have you brought in for us today? I mean, some of them look incredibly Wonka-esque, shining and glimmering and colourful, and then perhaps more traditional chocolates as well.
Yes. Well, I will, as it's National Milk Chocolate Day, I have brought along my very popular salted caramels. And these are made with...
Oh, if we just hold it up a little bit off the camera, we'll be able to...
These are made with Belgian chocolate, which has 33% cocoa. So it's a very versatile chocolate. It's dark, it's creamy, very slight undertones of toffee. Ooh. And it brings out the salt of the caramel absolutely beautifully. The other box, which is slightly more varied, I have a variety of milk, dark, white and gold. And the milk chocolates I have, as you said, they're very colourful. I hand paint them with coloured cocoa butter. I then mould them with chocolate that has been tempered, so melted, cooled down, and then to that mix, you add fresh chocolate to make it into a good temper, like a temper. And this one I have filled with ground almond praline and milk chocolate. The gold one is interesting because it's a special blend of chocolate that has undertones of salted caramel and milk chocolate. And again, it's quite toffee-ish, and that has been enrobed with milk chocolate.
Goodness me. I must say, they are absolutely delightful to look at.
Thank you.
I am sitting here salivating. Might we possibly be able to try one? What was the milk chocolate toffee variety you were just discussing?
Well, the milk chocolate toffee, creamy, caramelly one is this one over there. Another really lovely milk one is this one here. And that is made of honey and nougat, which is yummy. And what's quite interesting is if you have a blend of milk and dark. So this one is chili, and the filling is 75% dark and some milk.
Well, you're the expert. Which one should I have?
Are you a milk or dark?
Milk.
You're a milk.
It's National Milk Chocolate Day.
It is National Milk Chocolate Day. So I would go for salted caramel.
Salted... this one?
Yeah.
This one. Marvellous.
Yes.
Right. I will dig in and try and not embarrassing myself live on television. Eating things on television never goes well. But here we go.
That's exactly the right reaction.
I spoke too soon, but it's an explosion of caramel in the mouth. It's amazing.
Thank you. Well,
have you seen sort of interest and sales rise as a result of the aftermath of the Wonka movie?
I think chocolate has always been popular, and I think the idea that you don't eat chocolate in summer is a bit like saying you don't drink red wine. I think it always sells very well. I thought the Wonka movie was great because it was so colourful. And I think that did set off a bit of a trend, which was great.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for helping me embarrass myself.
That's a pleasure.
On television, for the delicious chocolate and for sharing National Milk Chocolate Day. Of course, it's a day I observe every year and definitely knew about before this programme. Liza Green, artisan chocolatier there. Now, some of you have been getting in touch about your favourite chocolate. John Andrews says a Snickers bar or Old Marathon bar and a jammy wagon wheel, Tom. But sadly, the shrinkflation has ruined chocolate bars. We need to get back to proper-sized chocolate bars. Whereas Suzanne says, Tom, Cadbury. Forget about European chocolate. Nothing beats Cadbury. And Pete says, whatever your opinions on the best chocolate, you can't deny that Liza's are very pretty. Which is very true. Well, thank you so much to Liza Green, not just for coming in, but for feeding me as well. Now, continuing our Taste of Britain, we'll be belatedly celebrating National Cheese and Wine Day. The CEO of Inflorescence, Jacinda Madison-Wilson, will be here to share the best British cheese and wines to indulge in.
Britain's newsroom. Weekday mornings from 9:30.
Well, we've got quite an extraordinary story to talk to you about now, because a triple amputee war hero is launching a bid to become the first to sail across the Pacific Ocean non-stop, solo and unsupported.
Craig Wood was blown up as a teenager by the Taliban in Afghanistan, but now he's hoping to change the perception of disabled people and raise money for other limbless veterans like himself. And Craig joins us now. Morning.
So, Craig, you are extraordinary. You are planning to take up to 80 days to sail from La Paz in Mexico to Japan.
Yeah.
How many miles is that?
It'd be over 6,000.
Amazing.
Amazing. And it will take you how long?
The minimum it's going to take me is 60 days. It could be up to 80. Yeah.
And that's on your own. You've done plenty of this before, haven't you? You've done lots of solo sailing.
Yeah, I've done quite a bit of solo sailing, but not as big as this. It is the world's biggest ocean, after all.
And why that particular route?
I wanted it to be a challenge, not just for me, but for anyone.
Right.
So any able-bodied person can look at this and go, wow, that is difficult.
Yeah.
And so that was the main drive. Then it's become a bigger thing than that now. Now I'm raising money for charity, and I can truly inspire people to change their perception on what is possible for disabled people.
And if you don't mind, can we ask you what happened in 2009 in Afghanistan? What were the circumstances of your injury?
I was on a normal routine foot patrol. About 5 metres in front of me, a commando IED was triggered. And subsequently, I became a triple amputee. Both legs above the knee, left hand at the wrist, facial injuries, etc., etc.
The People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true, You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled.
Lovely. Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
A very good afternoon to you. It's 47 minutes past midday. Now, this week we marked National Cheese and Wine Day. For a lot of people, there's nothing better than, that goes together than a smooth glass of wine and some premium quality cheese. Well, to enrich us on the best cheeses and wine to buy, I'm delighted to be joined by the CEO of Inflorescence. Inflorescence Wines, that is, Jacinda Madison-Wilson. Jacinda, thank you so much for joining us in the studio.
Thank you so much for having me.
Also, thank you so much for bringing what is
what a Sunday you're having.
of wonderful... What do we have before us?
So, we've got 3 gorgeous wines to try today. We've got an English sparkling, we've got a beautiful rosé and a dessert wine, and, of course, cheese.
Wonderful.
And paired them all beautifully.
Now, English sparkling wine has had a bit of a renaissance.
Oh, it's incredible, isn't it?
To use a French word to describe English sparkling wine. It's having a bit of a moment in the sun.
Absolutely. I just think it's so exciting that this is right on our doorstep, essentially, an hour out of London, and we're around beautiful vineyards, drinking gorgeous wine. Dare I say it, maybe even a little bit better than champagne.
Goodness
Might
me.
ruffle a few feathers, but I love it.
The chalk sort of sediment is exactly the same as the Champagne region of France.
Yeah, our soils are really similar. We use the same grape varieties a lot of the time. We make it in exactly the same way as Champagne. Our climate is like Champagne was 40 to 50 years ago. So we're really kind of drinking it blind. You almost wouldn't know that you're not drinking champagne. But it's right here on our doorstep. We can stay local now.
Absolutely marvellous. Well, we've got... what is the best order to start?
OK, well, we're going to start with sparkling, because all things in life should start with sparkling. I got married a month ago, and this was actually the... Thank you so much. This was the wine I chose to have as our first wine that we served the guests. This is from a winery called Bluebell, which is in Sussex, which is probably my favourite English sparkling wine. Obviously, that's why I chose it. Same grape varieties as Champagne, so Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, Pinot Meunier, and it's gorgeous. And I've chosen to pair this with a lovely kind of the English version of Camembert, which is called Tunworth. Okay. It's a very classic pairing of Champagne and Brie. So we're kind of going to do the English version of that now. Classic. Absolutely. Are you ready to get stuck in?
I am so ready to get stuck in.
Help yourself to this beautiful cheese.
Right.
Ooh. So that's the first one. Yeah,
the first cheese.
Absolutely.
Should I get a cracker as well?
Oh, well, up to you.
I'll just have the cheese.
Just go cheese. So this is your wine.
This is my wine.
Help yourself. And that's our gorgeous wine. So, well, cheers, Tom.
Well, cheers. Hang on. Is it cheese first or wine first?
I'd have a little sip of the wine first.
Sip of the wine, bite
have
of the
a little
cheese.
bite of the cheese, and there's some more wine. Get it all mixed up in there.
It's like a cheese sandwich.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay, here we go. Cheers.
Oh, it's just so good. I love it.
Now, I'm sure this is an entirely incorrect way to eat cheese.
Absolutely not.
Were we doing this properly, we'd probably have knives.
No, get stuck in with the hands.
But no, absolutely. Just to dive in and indulge.
Absolutely. So this works really well because there's a really lovely fresh acidity in a lot of traditional method wines. So you get that nice acidity cutting through the creaminess and the fattiness of the cheese, so it sort of resets your palate for the next bite. So that's why this combination works really well. So high acidity in wine is a great thing, especially when pairing with cheese.
Because it just completely clears your mouth.
Exactly.
It's like you're
so you're fresh, you're ready to go, aren't you?
Yeah. Or indeed, I could have another bite of cheese and have
carry
that
on.
same sensation from the... No, there we go. This is actually... I'm starting to realise why most television presenters don't eat on the job.
Yeah, I was going to join you, and then I thought, actually...
I have to be incredibly rude and talk with my mouth open, or sit in sort of awkward silence. But here we go.
No, tell me what you're enjoying. So I really love this. Has got kind of full of lovely floral notes. You've got this lovely brioche toastiness to it as well. So it's a kind of a very indulgent combination, this two together, don't you think?
Absolutely. Brilliant. Well, what's next?
So next, I like a bit of an unusual grape variety. I think this is where you can find really good value wines, because we all know France, Spain, Italy on the shelf. We all know Sauvignon Blanc, Merlot, but when you have a grape variety no one's really heard of, it's harder to sell. So you can actually find really good value if you try these more unusual grape varieties. And Waitrose have very kindly made a range called Loved and Found, which highlights all of these more unusual grapes. And so we're going to try a grape now which is called Aglianico, which is an Italian red grape variety from Puglia that makes really kind of full-bodied spicy reds, but also beautiful rosé. So what I love from this rosé, if you want to have a little swirl and a sniff, is that it actually is a proper rosé. I find a lot of rosés at the moment are quite bland, and they've almost gone more like white wine. If I'm having a rosé, I want it to be full of wild berries and watermelon and pomegranate.
And what are we pairing this with?
So this is going to pair with a very exciting cheese called Cabra Carino, which is a honey goat's cheese from Spain. So this is probably the most un-goaty goat's cheese you can get, because I know not everyone loves goat's cheese. And then it's been macerated in honey, so it's got this really lovely sweetness running through it. So that's that middle one.
I do have an enormously sweet tooth, so
excellent. This will work really well.
Again, wine, cheese, wine.
Yes, absolutely, always. What a combination. So I really like the kind of all those sweet red fruit notes in the rosé working nicely with that honey and the goat's cheese. Plus, you've still got that nice fresh acidity in the wine that's cutting through the creaminess. And it's all just... It's a very summery combination, this one.
Yeah, I don't know if I would have thought this is goat's cheese or not.
That's what I mean. It's quite un-goaty, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean. It's
because a lot of people, when I do a wine and cheese tasting for people, and you say we're having a goat's cheese, people are like, oh, I don't like goat's cheese. I'm like, no, you do. Trust, have this one. It's really really good.
being told we're short on time. So
OK, right, quick, getting to the last one then. So, really classic dessert wine Sauterne from Bordeaux. The grape is Semillon. This is probably not only my favourite cheese and wine pairing, my favourite food and wine pairing, because there's just so much good stuff going on. So, blue cheese. This is a lovely German blue cheese called Montagnolo Affine. And it's a fairly mild blue cheese, so if you're not a big blue cheese fan, it's still wonderful. And then you get the sweet combination in the wine working with the saltiness in the cheese, and the dessert wine will make the cheese feel less kind of intense, because I know blue cheese can be a bit funky sometimes, and then the cheese makes the wine feel less sweet. So it's all just all wonderful. So it's a bit of a flavour explosion, this one.
Flavour explosion, here we go.
Oh, and that wine it's just like liquid honey, isn't it? How incredible is that?
Yeah. Wait, hang on. Yeah,
you need more. We'll just keep doing this after.
I really understand what you mean by flavour explosion.
Yeah.
You can absolutely get everything.
And they really change each other, don't they? Which is what I find just most fascinating about
I think this
one.
might be my favourite cheese.
Yeah. Oh, good. Yeah, me too.
Yeah, very good.
It's great, isn't it? Well, there we go.
On that note, I'm afraid we're going to have to draw to a close, and I haven't even finished all of my wine. I'm afraid I'll be able to do that afterwards. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Madison Wilson,
It's been lovely.
thank you so much
Thank you
to
so
everyone
much.
watching as well. Michael will be back next Sunday, but up next, it's Dawn Neeson.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News forecast. Lots of sunshine across the UK today, dry and settled, and temperatures rising, particularly over the next few days. And that's thanks to an area of high pressure right across the UK at the moment, light winds, plenty of sunshine as well. And that's the case for the rest of the afternoon. England and Wales, plenty of sunshine, a little bit of cloud bubbles up, but not spoiling anything. A little bit more cloud perhaps for Northern Ireland and the far northwest of Scotland, but most places staying dry. And in the sunshine, temperatures lifting widely into the low 20s, towards the mid-20s in the southeast, 26, 27 Celsius possible, a little cooler around the coast, but high UV levels as well. And if you're planning to be outside for the evening time and afternoon, evening barbecue, we're looking at temperatures in the mid-20s, particularly inland areas. Plenty of dry weather, sunny spells across the board as well. A great end to Sunday, though just a little bit more cloud across the far north of Scotland, and perhaps one or two splashes of rain for the Western Isles. But overall, even here, temperatures getting into the low 20s. Through the evening and overnight, it stays dry for much of England and Wales, clear skies. A weak weather front may produce some light and patchy rain across Northern Ireland into northwest Scotland as well, but even here, most places staying dry. And just like last night, a few mist and fog patches possible in one or two spots. And temperatures up a little bit, generally holding up in double figures in towns and cities, a little fresher in the countryside. But blue skies for Monday across England and Wales, hazier sunshine for the north of Northern Ireland into Scotland. Later on, thicker cloud could bring some rain across the far northwest here, but generally light and patchy, turning breezy too. And temperatures higher, approaching 29, 30 Celsius towards the southeast, so feeling hot.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Celebrate a spectacular summer with your chance to win an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash in our Great British Giveaway. It's the biggest prize of the year so far, and it's totally tax-free. What would you spend that on? Luxury holidays, a new car, or just put it away for a rainy day? Whatever you do with £30,000 in tax-free cash, make sure you don't miss out on a chance to make it yours. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good Afternoon Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in birth